The U.S. Special Envoy Tim King values the positive role of Jordan in facilitating Sana'a-Amman flights. UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg overcomes the obstacle of Houthi passport documents and the first flight from Sana'a airport to start next week. Houthi militia continues using summer schools to recruit children as soldiers and send them to war fronts. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rana Swaylam. U.S. envoy to Yemen expressed his appreciation for Jordan's support in facilitating Sana'a-Amman flights. He further mentioned that broader efforts are done by Jordan to help end the war in Yemen. He also said that these efforts strengthen the UN truce and give Yemenis hope and tangible relief. The U.S. envoy said that he's looking forward to the first flight soon. The UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg has managed to convince warring parties to settle the issue of Houthi travel documents, which hampered resumption of commercial flights 3 weeks ago. This breakthrough would surely ease out the flights for citizens traveling from Sana'a airport. This report has more details.
Hans Grunberg, the UN envoy to Yemen, has solved the issue of Houthi travel documents which blocked commercial flights from departing Sana'a airport just 2 weeks before the 2-month truce ends. The UN envoy gained the legitimate government's approval to travel documents issued in Sana'a and the rest of the Houthi-controlled areas during the ceasefire, which will allow the resumption of flights from Sana'a airport. In addition, the government agreed to operate flights from Sana'a airport to Jordan during the settlement period to allow the Yemenis to travel with passports issued by Sana'a and other governorates. The Yemeni government said that the approval came out of its full commitment to helping the people and to alleviate their suffering resulted from the Houthi militia's actions, which rejected all political solutions. Also, the Yemeni government affirmed its efforts to achieve peace, calling to choose the path of peace under national and international references and in a way that preserves Yemenis' unity as well as the people's rights to freedom, social justice, and equality. The UN envoy is expected to brief the Security Council on the latest developments in his efforts in Yemen, following the request of international and regional support to extend the truce, hoping to launch peace consultations. The UN envoy also met with the Presidential Leadership Council President Rashad Al-Alimi, Prime Minister Ma'in Abdel Malik, and the Deputy Head of Presidential Leadership Council Tariq Saleh. Finally, Grunberg stated that all parties need to move swiftly in implementing all elements of the truce and to reduce the impact of the war on citizens and facilitate the freedom of movement of people and goods.
The Supreme Council of the Federation in Emirates elected Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed as president unanimously. The council held a meeting in Abu Dhabi in the presence of Sheikh bin Zayed and the rest of Emirates rulers. The G7 summit called on Yemeni parties to engage in constructive peace talks. Under the leadership of the UN, the summit aims to turn the truce into a permanent ceasefire and eventually reach a lasting peace. They also called for accountability of Houthi violations and abuses of human rights and international humanitarian law. Despite Houthi repeated violations against the UN-mediated truce, observers still consider it a major political breakthrough in 8 years. Recent reports indicated that civilian casualties have dropped dramatically since the announcement of ceasefire. This report has more on this story.
According to UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg, a 2-month renewable ceasefire between the warring parties in Yemen is holding, presenting the potential of a durable solution. The first statewide ceasefire in 6 years began with the start of Ramadan and includes provisions to enhance civil and commercial travel across the war-torn Arab nation. The UN envoy viewed the move as a window of opportunity for pursuing peace. He stated that the coalition, which supports the internationally recognized government, Houthi opposition forces, the region as a whole, and the international community, must maintain continuous commitment to guarantee that the truce holds and becomes a turning point toward peace. He highlighted encouraging facts since the truce began on April 4th, including a significant decrease in violence and civilian casualties, no confirmed airstrikes, more fuel flowing through the Hodeidah region's ports, and preparations for commercial flights from Sana'a's airport, which the Houthis control. Reports of military actions near Ma'rib, on the other hand, must be handled through the truce procedures, or risk triggering a new escalation. The truce's first aim is to loosen restrictions on the movement of commodities and citizens. The UN envoy said the work is underway to get flights to and from Sanaa's airport back on track as soon as possible. Another objective is reaching a deal to unblock highways in the contentious Taiz region. He noted that the truce, a product of the parties' agreement and the long-standing and relentless efforts of Yemeni civic actors, youth organizations, and women peace activists to end the conflict, is still fragile and temporary. He stated that during his recent trip to Muscat and Sana'a, the Houthi-held capital, parties reaffirmed their commitment to all areas of executing the truce while discussing future measures for strengthening and extending it. Mr. Grunberg described the following weeks as a test of the parties' commitment to respect their agreement and establish truce and confidence in the fragile accord as a unique opportunity to pivot towards a sustainable and peaceful future. Yemen will require the international community's help now more than ever to find an inclusive, peaceful, and long-term solution to the crisis.
An oil pipeline was blown up in Maifa district in Shabwa. Unidentified people exploded a pipeline transporting crude oil. Local sources said that this pipeline transports oil to Al Nashima district with a length of 330 kilometers. A summer center child was killed after being dragged into front lines by the Houthi militia. The Houthi militia carried out a funeral for this child after forcing him to fight in their fronts. Local sources indicated that the militia had polarized this child last year in a summer center which aims to deceive children and school students. Although the Houthi rebels have signed an agreement with the United Nations for not using children in armed conflict, they seem to have taken back that commitment and started a campaign to force children attend summer schools as the first step to recruit them and send them to war fronts. This report has more details.
The Houthi militia continues to ignore the truce and peace efforts, and they didn't content only with this, but they are using children as a tool to implement their sectarian ideologies through summer centers to attract new fighters on its fronts. The summer centers have become a Houthi umbrella to deceive children and push them to their fronts in a crystal clear confirmation of the militia's bloody refusal to achieve a decisive peace that ends the suffering of Yemenis, but they even took the truce as an opportunity to take a breath and to search for new fighters, enhance its weapons and combat capabilities. While Yemenis are waiting for the opportunity to get out of the hell of war and end the suffering of millions of Yemenis, the Houthi militia continues to ignore the outstretched hands for dialogue, and they are dealing with the truce and peace efforts with a deaf ear. Despite the humanitarian appeals and the intense regional and international moves to persuade the militia to abandon its domination and prepare for a new phase of partnership. However, they are still working on their authoritarian project, and they are mobilizing programs to control minds, with the aim of preparing society to accept their hegemony and their sectarian state. Although the summer centers are known throughout the world as recreational incubators to make use of students' spare time in order to strengthen their scientific and moral lessons and develop their loyalty and sense of belonging to the homeland, the militia has turned them into a miniature version of their cultural courses that dedicate loyalty and holiness only to their leaders in the minds of children. Since the end of the educational lessons 3 months ago, the militia has taken advantage of the school holiday and the temporary truce to conduct intensive mobilization programs through the Ministries of Youth and Sports, Education, and the local administration, and it allocated billions of dollars to equip unnecessary summer centers instead of paying salaries for 2 million of its hungry employees. And they sent intensive messages through schools, communication sites, TV and radio programs, and even household gas supervisors, in a fierce campaign calling on citizens to register for their children in these centers, under the pretext of developing their scientific capabilities. And as soon as they join, they are surprised by a sectarian and mobilization culture that indulges poison and honey. In order to impose its domination, it uses many deceptive means of influence to dictate generations with its reckless ideas, for most of which is taking advantage of the school holidays and its summer centers which are distorted by its ideology to eliminate the national message and replace it with a foreign sectarian message.
A child was killed. His father and mother were injured due to Houthi violations of the truce. Local sources stated that the Houthis bombed several villages in Taiz Governorate, which resulted in the killing of the child. The sources said that the child was killed during a Houthi shelling targeting the village of Al Sa'ila in Al Sayahi district. The United Nations has listed Yemen within the shame list because of the flagrant human rights violations against children. In an attempt to delist Yemen, the National Committee for Combating Child Recruitment has conducted field visits to some military camps to raise the awareness of the officials to the danger of such violations. More details are within this report.
The Joint Technical Committee for Child Recruitment Prevention carried out a field visit to military and security hubs in Taiz. This visit was conducted with the coordination of United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF to ensure the extent of commitment to combating child recruitment according to local and international charters.
We've set a program to conduct visits to all governorates to ensure the void of children who are less than 18 years in military hubs and to avoid child abuse or forced recruitment to use them in fighting or on front lines. The purpose of this visit is to remove Yemen from the list of shame listed by the United Nations as a country that violates the rights of the child.
While the Houthi militia was not satisfied with the forcible recruitment of more than 30,000 children in its areas of control and sending them to death for 7 years, it launched at the beginning of the 8th year a new recruitment campaign called Yemen Storm, or what is known as Asarul Yemen, with the aim of recruiting the largest number of children without any regard for childhood.
Forced recruitment process, which is done by the Houthi militia, is considered violation against those children and human rights in general. What is really regrettable is that the international law organizations are not concerned with this issue.
From here, voices calling for prohibition and criminalization of children recruitment to involve them in wars and armed conflicts have arisen. The Houthi summer centers are the paved road to eliminating the brains of children, the danger that threatens the present and future of Yemen, which prompted media and human rights activists to launch an electronic campaign under the hashtag Terrorist Industry Centers to warn against the consequences of joining those appalling centers.
The Houthi militia launched 2 attacks with drones, along with 17 other violations within 24 hours. The Western Coast France witnessed a flagrant violation of the truce with 2 consecutive attacks. The military media of the joint forces reported the Houthi attacks in Al-Jarrahi, which resulted in the injury of one of the joint forces members. Coming next. Measles hits Aden Governorate amid total collapse of healthcare system in the city.
أقول لك راحت بالغداء لأهلها شلت الغداء وراحت بالأهلها في المزرعة. والمزرعة ركبت على حمار ما حتى نص المزرعة وانفجر فيها اللوم، دعست على اللوم وانفجر فيهم. الحمار انتهى ما ترفت بقعت رجليها كامل. نغير منها نغير الشبعلة اللي هي البيت سابحة من دور رجلين لما صافناها طبية أقرب طبية وصافناها لهنا بطرت رجليها كامل.
قلت أزود هلي وقابل لي لعب وطبعته تحت الزواية.
Welcome back. Measles has spread in major parts of Aden Governorate, infecting a great number of children. Despite the efforts done by the medical staff at Al Sadaqa Hospital to contain it, the cases are increasing dramatically. This report has more details.
The displacement of the citizen Yahya from Hajjah to Aden was not the only problem burdening him and his family. Yahya had other sufferings as his 10-year-old son was in Al Sadaqa General Hospital suffering from the deadly disease of measles, which deteriorated his health and his body.
I came to Aden because of the war and we arrived at Al Basatin. I tried to look for a job, but unfortunately I couldn't find any, and I have 7 girls and 3 boys. I couldn't afford a living for them, so I started to look for any other jobs like car washing. Before Ramadan, my son got measles and I immediately went to hospitals and clinics. They asked for money, but I couldn't afford to pay, so his health deteriorated. Then I moved him here to Al Sadaqa.
The case of Yahya's son is not the only one, but there are hundreds of children affected by this dangerous disease, which recently spread again.
My son suffers from measles and high fever, and I ask authorities to provide medicines, as a lot of children suffer from measles. The number of patients suffering from measles has increased, and we couldn't provide for them extra beds because the cases keep increasing and each room has from 2 to 3 beds only.
The spread of measles in Aden and the neighboring governorates is threatening the lives of children amid the inability of public health centers to play their medical role and the role of private hospitals from receiving sick cases, which increases the number of injuries and deaths at the same time.
Measles is a virus that is easily spread. It is spread through breathing. If the patient coughs, the virus then starts to spread. The hospital, as you saw, is on full capacity, and we are very affected that we can't do anything for these patients, to the point that some kids are on the floor because there is no more beds to receive the patients. The problem is not insufficient medicines alone, but also the lack of staff and lack of number of beds.
The absence of vaccination and vaccination campaigns against measles and the lack of social awareness of its seriousness, as well as the scarcity of available health capabilities, constitute an epidemic disaster that is difficult to recover. Health authorities are required to activate their role to save the lives of children and save the medical sector, which is experiencing an unprecedented setback and deterioration.
The United Nations revealed that billions of riyals are earned by Houthis from imports of Al Hudaydah port within 1 month. The data of the UN inspection showed a significant increase in the proportion of food and fuel imports to Hudaydah port. The report monitored a 33% increase in food imports that were unloaded at the port compared to the monthly average for 2021. The Yemeni Organization for Standardization has participated in the 52nd meeting of Gulf Standardization Organization. The meeting discussed 617 documents specialized in standardization and development of infrastructure. The meeting came out with a number of decisions and recommendations that support the unification of various standardization activities. The Prime Minister directed the rapid implementation of the full operation plan of Aden refineries. This came as an attempt to secure the local market needs of oil derivatives and supporting the national economy. During his meeting with the Minister of Oil and Minerals, he stressed on the need to enhance the plan for receiving and managing oil facilitation. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim King values the positive role of Jordan in facilitating Sana'a-Amman flights. UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg overcomes the obstacle of Houthi passport documents and the first flight from Sana'a airport to start next week. Houthi militia continues using summer schools to recruit children as soldiers and send them to war fronts. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.